I'll do a quick intro of me. Some of you already know me, but my name's Carrie. I've been in Toastmasters now for about 3.5 years in a corporate club setting. And I've been on the exec team multiple times, vice president education, president, and this past year, starting in July, I'm officially an area director. So I kind of have a lot of different experiences, and I'm hopeful that I might be able to share a bit, especially the corporate background, because we don't have any panelists that are in the corporate environment right now. But what we are going to be talking about today is open houses. And how I want to get this started is really just having all our panelists do a quick 1 to 2 minute introduction, who you are, you know, maybe a bit of your experience with open houses, so that we can get to know everyone a bit better. So I'm going to start with Michael, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone, fellow Toastmasters. My name is Michael Zitney. I'm the president of Advanced 60 Speakers, and I also have gone through various executive roles. So we've done open houses as VP membership, VP education, and now president. And I should mention that I'm also a member of a regular club that is an open corporate club. So it's a corporate club at Enbridge Toastmasters, but it's open, so we have about 50% corporate members and about 50% outside the company that come in or used to come in for the meetings. So I have experience with those two different kinds of formats, advanced club and open corporate club. And I'm happy to share any experiences I have and any knowledge that I've accumulated. And I'm glad to see everybody else here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. And next up, we have JD. You can do a quick intro.
My name is JD Thomas. I have been Toastmaster for over 10 years. I am the President and Chief Communications Officer of Jade Strategic Relations, a public relations and communications company. I have extensive work with open houses, including because my club is sometimes very tough to find when we're in person. We had the challenge of not getting guests out to our club for open houses. So I came up with a plan, and we did 2 full meetings at the Pickering Town Center. And it was in January of 2012, and it was a phenomenal success. We enabled a lot of clubs that joined in to do things with us. And we found just another way of doing an open house that allowed to get most exposure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Bob, if you can do a quick intro.
Hi, I'm Bob Stewart. I am the president of Keynote Advanced. I started in Toastmasters 5 years ago in Saskatoon, and then I moved to Toronto. And for a little while, I was at 4 different clubs, which I've really toned down now. I was just at Keynote, and I think I'm just going to keep it at that. Before, I was a sales manager at Fortune 500 company, and now I'm a small business owner on my own laser clinic. Keynote, we already have had our open house, and it was an incredible success. We actually were keeping track of the invites on Eventbrite, and 45 people signed up on Eventbrite, and 28 people actually logged in, which, if you're familiar with Eventbrite, invite versus invitate, people actually showing up, that is a great success rate. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Elton.
I'm Elton Brown. I am with Creatively Speaking Toastmasters. I'm their president, and I have been a Toastmaster since 2011. So I've had my belly full of open houses. I find that open houses are so important. So to have all of us here and the panelists, and I know all of you, so it's going to be a wonderful time to put our heads together and give everyone what they need in order to have a successful open house.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for doing a quick introduction. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to volunteer to be on this panel and share your knowledge with everyone else. So I'm just going to kind of get right into this. I do encourage you, do put questions in the chat. We do have a bit of a smaller group, so it may be something I might be able to address right away. I have some prepared questions, but if there's somewhere where we can go that's very related to what we're talking about, I'll try to bring that into the discussion if I can. And the other thing I just kind of want to mention as well is I really do want to keep this really focused on providing the most value in the remote environment, just because that's where we are right now. It is a big challenge. So just kind of keep that in mind, especially for the panelists as well. So I'm just going to get going. The first question that I think is really important, and it's talked about a lot, which is really just your open house agenda. So how do you structure your open house meetings? Are you kind of doing the same old meeting? Are you doing something really different? So I'm curious to hear from one of our panelists. Anyone? You can just go off mute if you would like to speak. JD, I'm gonna go have it over to you.
Sure. It's been my experience that doing something different than you would normally do in a club environment provides kind of a bait and switch feel for any of the guests that show up. They go to their open house, you've got some different structure, they don't know about table topics at all, and so and they come out and then it's totally different, and they're being asked to talk when they weren't expecting to, and there can be a lot of nuances in that can create some flags for people. My recommendation is make sure that you have a lot of energy and base your agenda, your theme of the meeting, on the subject that's going to be of interest to the people you're communicating to and promoting to. If you are looking to a demographic to fill your club with a demographic of, let's say, college students, because you're close to a college, because when we do go back to in person, then you want to make sure that they can stick around. But in the meantime, it's all good. But if you want to bring in more college students, then what you want to do is have something of your theme based upon getting the job, or how Toastmasters helps you become a better communicator for the job. Make it quick and punchy, but make your agenda something that's going to be of interest to the people who you're trying to bring in.
I think it's a great point, because, and I'm curious to hear from the rest, but I think sometimes people do find that to be the case, and it's not actually a normal meeting. So I think that's a really great point that you brought up. Does anyone else have anything?
Yes.
Elton.
It's about, in terms of, I guess, content. A lot of people, when they're planning these events, they want to have an individual. They say, okay, we're going to have maybe 2 speakers. We're going to have someone who is maybe they've only finished level 1, and they're going to have them as a speaker, and then someone else. I find that it's best to have someone that is spectacular, because you want them to have someone that they can aspire to. If they see someone that's just started in Toastmasters, they're gonna say, I've seen that already. I could do that myself. Why would I need to join? So you want to show them someone who is actually a showwoman that can actually show what Toastmasters is all about, and actually the end result, I guess, in terms of if they stick with the program.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think, to your point, I think it's important to have an excellent speaker, but then maybe for that person, maybe at the very end, to say, hey, this isn't where I always was. Because I know sometimes in my club, we have these excellent speakers, but then new members actually can get intimidated by that, because they don't actually know all the hard work that's gone into that. So I think it's a great point. I think it could be helpful to kind of supplement it with a bit more information as well, though. JD, were you going to say something?
I saw Bob looking like he was going to say something. I don't know if you wanted to catch in, because I've already started it, Bob.
Bob, were you going to say something? You're on mute.
Sorry. But I agree with a lot of the stuff that's being said. I think you have to bring your A game. And I think we've already had our open house. We brought our A game, our very best speakers, the very best people at table topics. But we also had 2 people who did not a full speech, but like a 2 or 3 minute thing, talking about their experience at Toastmasters when they started and how it's changed their life. And so that's, again, thinking out of the box, not a table topic, not a long speech, just a short 2 or 3 minute thing. And those I think really help.
Yeah, make it accessible to the people who are on.
Yeah, I think testimonials are amazing and very well used in an open house. Michael.
Why would somebody join your club? You have to, the executive team has to sit back and say, what do we offer? What do we offer? Why would somebody want to be part of this group? And so take a hard look at yourself and say, okay, we do this really well, but we don't do that as well. So for example, we pride ourselves in Advanced 60 on evaluations. So we've had a couple of evaluation contests, sort of fake evaluation contests, if you will. We've had our best evaluators. We've had a clinic, a good workshop on evaluating. So kind of focus on what you do well and show off a little, demonstrate your strengths to your prospective members. And then they'll come in and like somebody said, it won't be a bait and switch. It'll be, this is what I signed up for. This is what I'm getting.
If I may also, with regards to agendas, in closed clubs, it can be, everyone thinks that, hey, we've got nobody else we can bring in or whatever kind of constraint or what we can do. Well, I'd say one, bring in, let's say, the president of the company or somebody high up that's supposed to be the keynote speaker, and yeah, have a couple of newer members to show that transition. But having that big draw, that president or somebody there that would be somebody that other people in the company want to see. And presidents and management always bring their own people with them, so they're good people to have. But also think outside the box, because you're going to want to, in a corporate environment, there's going to be other people in the company who aren't just wearing white collars. They're going to be wearing different colored collars, and you don't want to bring them in too. So try to target them and say, hey, look what we've got here, come on in.
Another trick is table topics, whether you're looking for experienced Toastmasters or you're looking for non-Toastmasters to join and become Toastmasters. The table topic master can, first of all, there has to be a very easy question. You can't do one of these like, name one thing when you were 5 years old that made you the person you are today. You got to have a very, very basic question and then get as many guests as even will bother answering to try and answer that. And that way they can get the idea that they're there to improve their speaking, and this is the first step, and they're taking the first step, and they can see themselves maybe even improving as they go along. And of course, table topics, we know, is a real contest, and it has to be fair, but it doesn't hurt if one of the guests wins that particular table contest. Let me just say.
Sorry, I just wanted to say before you talk, Elton, that your point about table topics is very valid. So I really appreciate that. But yes, Elton, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to piggyback right onto that. I know when I became, one of the reasons I became a Toastmaster was because I won. And I was floating out of there. Out of the room. I felt so good. But then halfway down the street, I went, wait a minute, this thing is rigged, because, this is probably what they do to get people to join. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to go back next week and see if I can win again. Well, I didn't win again, but I did join. So it can definitely be a hook in order to get individuals enthused and to join the club.
Yeah, everybody raise your hand if you won as a guest, as your first time guest at Toastmasters. There's got to be a lot of hands. Yeah. It's
yeah, and that actually brings up something interesting, which is table topics, because table topics is a lot more unique in a open house. So I know for myself, I've really coached, when we've had open houses in our company, I've really coached that person who's leading it to say, hey, it needs to be incredibly easy, first of all, and to really call on guests. But I'm curious kind of how the panelists here are looking at table topics in the context of an open house versus a regular meeting. JD?
First, when we do table topics, there was a bit that we have scripts for all our roles, especially for new members when they get to do it. And in the script for the table topics master, it says right in there, there are no wrong answers. And I myself say, if I ask you, why is the sky blue? You can say, I like that question, but I would rather talk about how my day was. Perfectly legitimate. And that takes the pressure off of a guest of thinking that they have to. But also, as a table topics master, know not to call on a guest first. Big thing.
Sorry, does someone else have something to add?
Just to piggyback on what JD was saying, we did, I did a presentation in my work environment. I had an opportunity to talk about what Toastmasters was, and we did table topics. And instead of saying out loud to everyone in the room what the topic was, we had them written on a piece of paper when you drew them out of a jar. And I said, you know, you can pivot, we don't know what's on the paper. So you can use the topic, and that way we don't know that they made it up. The only person who knows that they made it up is the table topics master. So in that way, they also have the comfort of doing something different without feeling like they've failed. Do you know what I'm saying? So they still have that opportunity, but nobody knows except you and the table topics master. And I did have someone come up and do that. He made a big joke of it. He was very comfortable speaking, but he started talking about his manager or something and his experience on the job. And it was very personable, but I think that's an added element that worked well for us. So.
For sure, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else have anything to add on this? Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with JD. Where very few clubs do table topics explanation properly to guests. They don't tell them that you can just use your imagination, talk about whatever you want, and that they assume that they understand that. And most people, even at our advanced club, when we have guests, they don't explain that to people. And I think that that is key, is just the detailed explanation for table topics.
The other thing too is the fact that going back to the original question, is the difference between a table topics in a open house closed club setting versus, or in fact, forget that, just an open house versus a regular meeting. The purpose of, for me, the purpose of the table topic is to hook people, to get them interested in going. So the questions are going to be very open-ended, as opposed to in a regular Toastmaster meeting, they may be a little more challenging because, you know, this is why you're here, so that you can learn to speak, you know, right off of your feet, come up with the beginning, middle, and end, get in, get out. And I think that's the two differences between between the open house version. I mean, yeah, open house version as opposed to the regular club version.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Elton. I will say that for sure. Michael, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, there's an advanced move is to tie the table topics to the theme of the meeting. It's not a big deal because as Toastmasters, we can talk about anything, but for somebody coming in, it really makes us look organized and kind of a unified approach. So it's, even if they don't notice it outright, it'll in the back of their mind, it'll make us look very organized and businesslike.
At Ajax Pickering, we have our table topics master chooses the theme. So that way the table topics is on the theme. And I inform the grammarian of what the theme is so they can choose a word that fits into that paradigm. It makes it a whole lot easier to use. I always say keep the word of the day simple and easy to put within there. And then next thing you know, you've got people going, oh my, you're a guest and you spoke to the theme and you used the word of the day. And it's just, make it easy. Make it easy for them to have a win and feel like they are good in that spot.
That's great. That's amazing. I really appreciate all the diversity of thought with this and getting everyone's opinion. Louise, did you have a question kind of on this topic?
Yeah, I thought we had to actually go through the chat, but I didn't hear any response. So in the voting of table topics, how do people explain it to their guests about the voting? Because in some clubs they vote, other clubs don't. Some clubs vote and then the person's told they can't vote for themselves. How do you manage the voting process to decide who wins or doesn't?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this off to the panelists. In my club, we don't vote. I think just to avoid some of the politics around that, that's just kind of a decision we've made as an exec team. But I am curious for the members here, for the panelists here, if you have any input. Bob?
At Keynote, we don't vote. And I think most advanced clubs don't vote. I think it's more of a fun thing to do at regular clubs to get more people excited. So I think that when you're doing an open house, I would rather stay away from that because that makes it maybe too competitive. You might scare some people away from with the voting. I wouldn't do that.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to add on that?
We do vote, and we vote with a private chat to the table topic master. You can vote for yourself if you want to, but what I don't like is when the table topic master said, oh, it was a tie, so I had to, so that, just announce a winner, pick a winner, and move on. But I think it can go either way, but I don't think it's that big a deal to vote and have a winner, and then especially if a guest wins, then, it can make a big deal about it.
Well, if anybody needs, I've just posted in the chat the table topics winner picture. It's a picture of the ribbon, and we present that to the winner. We do vote, and it is just the same as Michael suggested. It goes to the vote directly to the table topics master, and then we always present this ribbon afterwards. And one of our members usually has the ribbon as their background, just to say, "Hey, you won." But yeah, the picture's there, and if anybody wants to reward the guests, there you go. That's there for you.
Awesome. That's a great question, Louise. So thank you for that. So I think, does anyone else have anything else they want to add, the panelists, on kind of the open house agenda? I think we've gone through quite a bit. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our next topic. Yep. JD?
Remember that this is a PR endeavor, and that what you do, just as we did when we had the two of them in the mall, everything needs to be geared to making sure that the agenda, and this is with regard to the agenda, making sure that the speakers represent who you want to speak. Even choose the people that, if you've heard them do a speech before, have them redo it. Have the environment set up nice and safe for people to feel like it's a good place to be. Bring the energy, and make sure that you get as many people involved in participating. Make sure your agenda allows as many people to participate as possible. And if that includes more table time for table topics and maybe less speaking, getting people involved is the best part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And something I'll just say that I've done in past open houses, just to close off this section, is I've done a speech strategically about the value that I've gotten from Toastmasters. And it was a pathway speech, but I really made sure to hammer that home in an actual prepared speech, so that even in that moment, I'm already trying to sell people on becoming members of our club. So that's just kind of a piece of advice if you would like to do that. But the next thing I do want to move on to is really a hot topic right now. I'm an area director, so I hear this from a lot of my clubs, which is marketing. So I want to throw this to the panelists on how you market your open houses, but especially with the fact that everything is remote. So people can go to potentially 6 different clubs on one evening. So I'm really curious how people are marketing, especially with the reality that we're all remote now. Anyone?
I'm in PR, so I'll always say, I've always got an answer. So, but I'll start this one. I'll be quiet and let someone else take the first one next time. First, when you're thinking about promotion, think about who it is that you want to promote to. Again, we can bring anybody in and it's great, but your messaging is going to be different if you're speaking to a baby boomer than it is to a millennial. So first identify who your target demographic is and think about what your agenda is going to be and work off of that. Then you got to determine where that demographic is. And again, if it's a college, then maybe you want to see if you can talk to their colleges online, I've lost the name of it, the student council, and see if they would be willing to put a little ad for you on their social media. Make sure that you, again, if you're looking at an older demographic, boomers to Gen X, then you're looking at using Facebook. If you're looking to go younger, you want to go into Instagram and use other social media on that regard. Knowing your demographic is going to be key to where you are going to market. And I'll let others step in on this, but that's the first thing, is figure out who you're going to talk to first. And you can do multiple different promotions and multiple ads to multiple different groups, but try to talk in the way that they're going to hear.
I think that's an amazing point, and potentially even more challenging with the fact that we're all remote now. So it's a bit harder, I think, sometimes to identify who your target demographic is. But does anyone else have anything they want to add? Our panelists? Michael? were you gonna add something?
Yeah, sure. Those are excellent points, JD. And many corporations have their own communication system. You can try and buy in with HR, why this is a very important thing for every person in the corporation to know about at least. Also, I guess as just a general rule, if you're a club looking for more members, if you're kind of a mixed club, then you want to convert people into becoming Toastmasters. So you're looking for people that aren't Toastmasters right now. If you're an advanced club or you're looking for more mentors in your group, you want to market to Toastmasters who may be also members of other clubs. So, and what's the best marketing? Word of mouth. So get people that are connectors, somebody like Elton, who, thank you very much, you made me aware of this situation as well. So Elton or other Toastmasters that talk to a lot of people that belong to many clubs, get them to spread the word as well.
That's really helpful tips. Elton, were you going to speak next? Oh, and then I'll go with Bob after.
Yeah, okay. So what I find that's most important in all of this is if you're going to go for, if you're an open club, I believe it doesn't pay to have a person that's already a Toastmaster that comes to speak at your club, because you're not trying to draw Toastmasters to your club. You're trying to get outsiders to come to your club. So it's important to have someone maybe from the outside, like maybe your counselor, someone from president of another organization, someone from the Rotary Club, depending on your demographic, but the individual should be drawing people to you, because you're not looking for bums to put in seats by drawing in Toastmasters.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for sure. Bob, were you gonna say something?
Yes. At Keynote, we bring people in from all over the city, but a lot of clubs, they want the close geographic area around them. And if you do, there are residents associations in every little part of the city. I live in Liberty Village, and I'm a small business owner, and we're allowed to post in the Liberty Village Residents Association Facebook page, which goes to about 18,000 people. So this costs you nothing. And again, as a small business owner, we're allowed to post there once a month, no charge. So if you are trying to grab people from your geographic area, that is a great way to do it, because there's resident association every part of the city. One other thing we also did too is for our invite, we did like Gregory invite with pictures of the people at the club, but we also did a 45-second video. Videos are tricky. When you post like a 5-minute video, nobody's going to watch that. Time-wise, it's probably 45 seconds is the max. But we had Ron put together a really super high-powered, high-energy, brief video, and a lot of people commented on that. I think that was a good part of our success. I highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, I think that's
a great point.
Yeah, JD, I'll let you go into that a little bit more.
There are still a lot of online resources like Snapped, Eventbrite, Meetup. Those are places where calendars that people go to look for something to do. But when I was coaching one club, they had a Walmart in the area. And so I said, let's go put some flyers in the Walmart lunchroom, and promoted the club there. And there's, the staff, there was, I think, 50, 80 staff members at a Walmart. And those people got to see, we can still, and businesses are still open. There is still a need to, and still a use for paper flyers in local locations that people will get to know. And to Bob's point, local means a lot. I mean, right now, yes, we can bring in people from all over the world. Someone from Barbados who's a Toastmasters has just joined our club as well for until April. And we did the part membership until then. So that way, because after that, if we go back to have the capability, and if we can go back to in-person meetings, then this person, we don't want to have them spending money on a membership they can't be a part of. So if there's that still a possibility, at least go till April. Anybody that's going to be online and maybe not close, only let them pay till April. And beyond that, but try to promote mostly locally, close to where you are, because you don't want to end up in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it leads into another question that I think is interesting. Again, it's not something I deal with. I'm in a corporate environment, but what has everyone found to be the success of sites like Eventbrite, Meetup, and those sorts of things as far as marketing? Like, are you finding that's effective, or social media? Even like, what's the return on investment there?
I know that you have to use these vehicles way in advance. If your open house is a week from today and you decide now to put everything up, your results are not going to be well, because it needs to have to set and in order to gain traction. So as soon as you put these things up, yes, I know they say that it's available to anyone and everyone, but on certain levels it is not, because it just doesn't work that way. So by putting things up in advance, so I would say about a month to start making sure that your stuff is up using Eventbrite, Snap, all of those ones that are listed in our under our marketing resources. Using those will give you a jump. Last but not least, if you happen to be an open club, you put it out there on the news wire and see what newspapers may or may not pick it up. It's free. You've got nothing to lose, but the key is to use all these vehicles far in advance so that you get the results you're looking for. And I found that doing so, when I was at another club and I was the VPPR, and we used them, and I had them out there. I think it was more like 10 weeks out in advance. But at the day of the open house, we had 17 guests that came. So it really depends on putting it out there, and then sometimes you have to redo it again. You just don't throw it out there and say, okay, well, that's it. Sometimes you need to give these ads, or especially like if you're using a website or anything, you need to sometimes change it a little bit so it looks slightly different. You have to think more like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. If you go to their site today, it looks one way. You go back 2 weeks later, brand new site. It's, because they know that people, you go once and you come back twice and it's the same, then people say, it's predictable. Nothing's going to change here. They won't be back.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elton. I think those are all really good points. Michael, I'm curious if you had anything to add. Nothing? Yeah, so I think those sites, they can be really useful. I think it is kind of using it the right way. But I think the next question this kind of brings up is, how many of the panelists, are you using paid advertising to promote your club, or is it more some of these free resources? Bob?
Yeah, there are so many free resources today. Facebook, LinkedIn. We probably all have a LinkedIn of our own, but does your club have a LinkedIn or stuff like that? So social media. To reinforce what JD said about hard copies too, he said at Walmart, a lot of us in Toronto live in condo towers. They all have bulletin boards in the mailroom. Okay? So just make use of every possible, I don't think you have to spend a penny on this. If you do it right, it shouldn't cost you any money at all.
Yeah, promotion can be absolutely free. You're not selling anything, and even if you go to a company like Torstar, or which has a lot of subsidiary papers, a lot of mentioning that and they probably already know, but if they don't, say we're not for profit. Being a not-for-profit gives a lot of credibility, but it also provides an avenue which a lot of corporations have a little bit of a reserve for, hey, you know, this is our public duty and we're helping with a not-for-profit. And if it's just putting out a little blurb or something, they'll be more than happy to do it.
I've tried using some of these paid vehicles in order to, thinking that I'm going to gain a traction, and number two, to be able to get individuals to come. And I found that to be a waste of time and money. And going back to what's been said, I think there's enough free stuff out there that can be used in order to get your word out there. The other thing too, I just thought of too, is that, you know what, you can have, there's like 5,000, if you really look, there are many companies that are out there that will allow you to advertise for free. But you have to think about, again, going back to something that JD said earlier, is about the demographics. So do you want to, you know, have an ad going all the way out to, you know, 400 kilometers away and think you're going to draw people in? I don't think that's going to actually happen. But I do think that if you really look at what these people's circulation happens to be, that will determine whether or not they are the right resource for your club.
And the key thing in public relations, when I'm promoting with my clients, and we use multiple mediums, keep track of where you're promoting, when you're promoting, and then ask the guests, where did you hear about us? Because that's a very key thing, tracking where it's okay to spend money if you know where, if you've got the money to spend and you do it in a specific way that's targeted to the right demographic of that medium. But make sure that when guests come, ask them, how did you hear about us? Because then you'll know what was the most effective way, and you can filter out all the ones that weren't as effective, and then you can target a little bit better in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's so crucial to ask that question. Even if guests are doing a quick introduction, ask them in within that to say, how did you hear about us? I think that's a great way.
Actually, one thing, and I'm sorry to interject here also, that when guests show up, make sure that you give them a video release form. So that way that you can say that, I mean, it can be inside a little disclaimer when you do have when they go to sign up and register for the event, but you should also have them, it's a great place to say, yes, I authorize use of my picture being taken, or at least let them know that you're going to mute turn your camera off when we go to take a picture for promotional purposes, but also put in there, how did you find us? And just have a little, checkbox, and it can be on a Word document or text, or just ask those specific questions, and that way you can find out. But make sure you get that video release form.
Oh, I just thought about something else.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that I, how do I say this, that I take exception to is the guest book. I really haven't found how that fully helps a club gain attention, bring people back to their club, because normally in a guest book, usually you have the name of the person and their email address, and that's it. And let's say you have 5, 6 visitors. All you have is their name and their email address. But I think it should be something like more like a guest information intake sheet of sorts, where you get to ask them some basic questions: their name, their organization that they work for. Oh, and by the way, everything is voluntary. No one's forcing them to fill in any of the information. But to actually, ask them what made them come here, what type of occupation they're in, basic questions. But the bottom line is what you want to know is, what is their need? What's their need? And now when you take that information and you sit down and you now send an email back to these people, Toastmasters can help you with your white knuckling. if that happens to be the thing, where you're actually making the email, you're personalizing these things. So people will, if they get them, they're going to go, oh my God, you know, somebody's actually listening to me. And it was all because you had this intake sheet, which had that information on it, which allowed you to send back a email, welcome, you know, saying thank you for coming and please come back, because Toastmasters can help you with these things that you're struggling with.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elton. I am at the very end going to be talking a little bit more about growing membership and converting guests to members. But the one thing I want to chat about briefly, because I've encountered this quite a bit, trying to get people to come to some of my community clubs that I'm helping. So have you heard from certain guests or certain people within the Toastmasters community that they just don't want to be on a Zoom call anymore? Like, I'm very curious how you, like, if you've had these interactions and how you've kind of talked to that kind of a person, because I know I've heard it on my end.
Yes, I've definitely had that. And my question is always, first, always sympathize, because yeah, this is all we're doing nowadays, and most people are a little bit more personal than that. But then I'll follow up with, now, do you feel that you are doing better in them? Do you feel that you have improved at all in how you present online? Because then they say, this is how we can help you, because we can get you an opportunity to present more and become better at it. And maybe with some hints on how to do things a little differently, maybe it'll be a little bit better when you go forward.
That's great. I love that advice. I need to take that for myself. But does anyone else have anything that they want to add on that topic specifically?
I said I've always been uncomfortable in video. I got very used to standing in front of an audience and speaking very quickly. I wasn't, always a little bit nervous, but it's the adrenaline and everything, it's great. But I never, ever felt good being on video. I avoid the camera, I go, no, I don't want to, but being forced to, okay. I'm now to the point where, not perfect, but much more comfortable. So I think just member stories like me to saying, yeah, I'm much better at it now. Not perfect, but I'm much more comfortable.
That's great. That's great for sure. Does anyone other, oh, Michael, were you gonna say something?
With all of us working at home now, it's hard to separate your home life from your work life, and this feels like work sometimes. So just trying to reassure people that it's okay if their kid comes on screen, or their cat walks across their desk, or their dog barks. It's a very laid back atmosphere. It's not work, it's fun. It's self-improvement, yeah, but in a fun, collegial, cordial way. Don't think of it as work. Think of it as more like just a fun group of people getting together and, by the way, helping each other get better. So having that sort of attitude going forward sometimes reassures me.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Just to say, it doesn't have to be perfect. Whatever's going on in your background, because nobody is at this point. So, Louise, did you have a question?
Just a comment on the camera bit. I have found people say that they don't like seeing themselves stare back at themselves. And I found some people are much more comfortable when you say, oh, well, just go over your picture, click those little 3 dots. There's a choice to hide your self view. So you can take yourself off the screen if it really bothers you to look back at yourself. There's other little tricks about how you can do placing the screens. If you got like a shared screen, if you've got gallery view, speaker view, different things. But I mean, these little tips end up helping the audience. Then they increase their comfort level with Zoom.
Yep, I agree with that. And a lot of clubs are struggling, you know, because they say, you know, well, how do you bring energy? And I was leading the President's Club officer training not too long ago, and someone asked, well, how do you bring energy? Because I noticed that our meetings are so boring. You bring the energy. You bring up your energy. Whoever is the chairperson is your job. You're the MC. You're the Toastmaster. You're the one that's making sure the show runs. Bring the energy, because that energy makes it more exciting for people. Get people involved. Make sure that at least in every single meeting, people are raising their hand or getting involved at least once, if not twice. And if somebody doesn't have an opportunity to get involved, they're not going to feel that connection. So make sure you bring up the energy and make it more fun. And as was said earlier by the other panelists, make it fun to let them know that, hey, this isn't your boring normal place. We're probably all messed up and drunk anyway, so come on out, check it. Maybe, okay, maybe not that, but you know.
I know for Creatively Speaking a couple of weeks ago, what we did was we had a all things Hawaiian party. And it really did bring a lot of energy into the room. It wasn't quote unquote an open house, but it was more of a, even though we did get a couple of guests that did come, but it just brought so much energy into the room, and everybody in the room were having a good time. Even if they were kind of shy and quiet, they did have an opportunity to speak. So I think there's also more than one way to bring energy into a room. It also depends on the types of meetings that we provide. And if the theme of the meeting happens to be, I'll just say dismal, well, that sets the tone of the meeting. And so you always want to make sure that the theme of the meeting happens to be something that's uplifting, powerful, engaging, in order to, put the footing exactly where you want it, which is right over that electrical wire, so that you get the energy into that meeting.
It's a great idea. Now I can actually bring out my coconut bra.
It's interesting. Elton is one of the clubs I'm area director for, and I will say the Hawaiian meeting was really fun. I think the interesting thing too was at the Toastmaster of the day, in the middle of the meeting, I've never really seen this done before, but I think it was a great idea, is because there was a Hawaiian theme, we encouraged everyone to dress up with something Hawaiian, whatever they had at their home. And at the very middle of the meeting, she actually asked everyone, she's like, how are you incorporating this into your wardrobe today, whether you have a hat or something? And I think that was interesting because if I recall correctly, almost all the guests actually said something, because it wasn't a table topics. It wasn't like you're going to get some random thing. You knew it was coming, but it was still giving them a very small opportunity to be able to speak. I think I really enjoyed that, definitely on my end. Louise?
You can add something in really good humor. I did this at a meeting one day and it ended up cracking the whole place up. So if your meetings get too boring, you could do something like that and it could add some spice. Even if you just have it happen randomly, one person does it in a meeting, all of a sudden people realize we could actually have some fun in these meetings.
That's a great tip, Louise. Jennifer?
I mean, that's great. In one of our club meetings, all of a sudden, you see all the faces, and in some cases you can see everyone, in some cases you have to scroll the screen. And someone who was attending our meeting, she kept changing her hat. And every time you looked, she was wearing a different hat. And then one of the other guys started doing the same. So it wasn't anything planned. Maybe she planned it. But every time you looked at her, because you're looking at different people on the screen, she had a different hat on. So then it became the contest between the two of them to just change their hats. So yeah, you just have to make it fun. But I think going back to the part about we're all on Zoom, we have Zoom exhaustion. It can feel like work because there is etiquette and there's protocol and there's an agenda, and it can feel like work if we're all online for work. And we just have to shake it up a little bit and let people know that this is a fun environment, and it can be fun, but we do have to bring that to the table. We can't expect other people to do it for us. So those are all great.
Do just be careful, because some people do take things out of a little beyond. If you have a newer member, make sure that if they're presenting, try not to give any distractions to them. Try not to put stuff like, I would say that you want to encourage it, yes, but also make sure it doesn't get too out of control. We've had some people take things a little further beyond than what was. Have someone just be able to, okay, everyone, can we just bring it down a little bit? Remember that, because this is, again, you don't, especially in an open house, you don't want to get too far out of control, because then it won't feel as if that there's any control.
I think that's a really good point. There has to be a fun atmosphere just to get people to come back. but it can't go too far down that without kind of getting rid of some of the core things in Toastmasters. But Elton, did you have something to add?
Yes. I'm working with, I'm mentoring a club right now, and oh my God, their meetings are just like it's a duplication. I feel like they've just left from work and returned to work all in one step. And so to find, ways to get them to laugh or, joke, anything, has been very difficult. So, I mean, I don't see where there's a problem in a meeting if someone comes out with, and I'm not saying throughout the entire meeting, but maybe at certain points of the meeting where someone comes out with a 15-second zinger. And it's just enough not to have you maybe belly rolling, but it does lift the room up a little bit so that it doesn't, so it still feels fun. And as far as I'm concerned, that is okay, which goes back to what JD was saying about making sure, though, that it doesn't go too far, where all of a sudden someone is maybe trying to bring in a triple X joke, which would be totally, inappropriate. So, but yes, I think
One time, I did it one time.
Oh God.
I've done over 40 VPPR trainings, and the key thing about public relations is your brand is what you set. It's what people talk about when they leave their meeting. And that's who you are. That's what you want. So you want to make sure that's in there. There's only two things that you need to make a successful Toastmasters meeting. It has to be educational and has to be fun. If there's anything that you're doing in your meetings that is not educational and fun, get it out. Minutes of meetings. One of the things I see a lot of struggling clubs doing, it's not fun for anybody. It's not educational for anybody. Get it out. Bring the fun, make it educational. You're going to be great.
I think that's a really great point. And yeah, and even thinking about that, like the club business, right? Because sometimes in an open house, you really do have to be careful with that section of really making it specific to the fact that you're doing an open house and, asking guests for their experience or whoever you want to manage that. But I think a typical club business at the end of a meeting is not appropriate, at least in my opinion.
Some clubs do meeting minutes. Again, that's not, no one ever goes and checks those things back. Executive meetings you need to, and you shouldn't be having executive meetings during regular meetings, and we can get on a whole topic of that. But anything that's not going to be fun and educational, gone.
For sure. Does anyone else have anything they want to add of our panelists on this topic of marketing? I'm going to move on. Otherwise, we do not have any. No? Okay. I think that's great.
We
I
do
think
have
marketing...
one brief question in the chat,
yeah.
Carrie.
Sure.
And that is more of a clarification as to what is Newswire. I think it's Elton who mentioned that.
There is a service that you can use that will allow you to upload for free a announcement. So for an example, your open house announcement that you're going to have on this certain date. This is the person. This is what they're going to talk about. Toastmasters has been around for almost 100 years. Greatest thing since sliced bread. Come see us now. Here's the link to register, and you send it in. And then you can actually watch it. You can see how many hits you get in terms of the number of companies or people who develop newspapers will take it on and actually publish it somewhere in their newspaper. So that's what I meant by Newswire. And I can give you and I'll put in the chat the exact.
Yeah. It's in public relations, we use it for doing press releases all the time. Key thing about when you're using Newswire or anything like that, make your main title punchy. Make sure it's of interest to the group that you're. Again, know who you're targeting in your marketing. make it as punchy, as interesting as possible, because if you just say, we can help you be a better communicator, that's not necessarily going to bring anybody's attention. But if you can make a nice flashy headline with substance, but then follow up with a follow-up subheading that allows to describe a little bit more, like you would see in the newspaper. And the more interesting it looks, the more likely it's going to be picked up by some of the other outlets.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying that, Elton and JD. At this point, I want to move on to kind of our last topic, and I think it's a really important one, because usually in open houses, and maybe not all the time, but usually your main goal is to try to get members at the end of the day. So I'm really curious to hear from the group, what are your best practices when you're following up with guests after the meeting? Like, how exactly are you managing that to actually try to convert them to a member?
Well, this comes down to sales 101. You have to think of it as being in sales, and it's not a salesy thing to do, but it is closing, it's conversion rates. And you want to know, if you're getting 60 guests out to an open house, are you at least closing? So it is following up. So it starts, as Elton had said, asking why they are there. Too many guests go to meetings and are never even talked to by anybody from one of the Toastmasters. Finding out what's important to them. That's important not only for getting them in there in the door and saying, oh, well, yes, you can then directly talk to what their interests are and say how you can help them. But it also helps later on if you keep that written down somewhere. When they become a member, if they start to not show up as much, you can have your mentor, or if you have your mentor there, or you can just call them up as your VP of membership, whoever it is, say, hey, you joined because you were looking for X, Y, or Z. How are you feeling about your journey in that so far? And so not only is it a great point to get them in, but also helps keep them staying in.
For sure. I think it's a really great point. I will second that it is sales. It is 100% sales at the end of the day. Some people are better at that than others, but it essentially is. So I'm curious if, Bob, do you want to go?
Yeah, it's just an important thing with sales is timing, and the opportunity is right after the meeting. So if your meeting is, say, 90 minutes usually, book your Zoom meeting for 2 hours, and in that extra half hour, just encourage them to stick around and try to get them to commit right away. And if they don't commit right away, your hit rate is going to go way down. So try for that commitment right away. One thing we do too, well, I thought about it, we offer a special that day too, where it's $20 off of membership if they agree that day. Little incentive.
I like that. I like that a lot if they sign up right away. I'm curious, Michael, if you have anything to add on this topic.
Just good Toastmasters principles: greet people when they come in, and I agree with asking them to come in about 10 or 15 minutes early. VP membership should be busy, but they can't do it all, so all the other exec members have to be participating in that. You can even, if you've got a sophisticated Zoom master like we have now, you can even put people into breakout rooms, put a guest with an exec member into a breakout room, so it's a bit more quiet, peaceful, and just sales. Ask for the sale. A lot of people just go, oh, how's it going? Are you enjoying it? They don't say, well, are you interested in signing up? Here's what we have to do. So we just kind of try and seal the deal there.
Louise, did you have a question?
I actually have a point that might be helpful. I'm not the VP of membership in my own personal club, but when we had guests and our VP of membership was away, I stood in for her briefly. And what I did was I would ask a visitor for their name, and I make sure they're properly introduced in the meeting. Made sure I got their email address. At the end of it, the same thing as was just suggested, allow that time after the meeting for the executive to meet with the guests and talk to them and answer the questions. But there's another little piece of magic we wove into it, and I've turned 3 people into members within about 3 weeks. So what I did was, first of all, some of the little roles like calendar, timer, not the first time, but second or third time, say, would you like to try a role? Just see how it feels. We have scripts for it anyway. So I gave them that opportunity. Other thing I did is I made sure that the agenda was emailed to them every week. I'm glad you enjoyed our last meeting. I'm glad you said whatever you said, take a comment that they made. Remember that, make sure you include it in the letter to them, personalize it, in other words, send them the agenda and encourage them to come back. And then by the 3rd or 4th time, now you start making your pitch and saying, hey, if you want to become a member, please do. And we're going to be virtual the next 6 months, and on you go. And it's worked fairly successfully. So I just thought I'd share that.
I've just added into the chat a trifold brochure that I created for our club. I've provided to the VP of PR training every time I do it, and a membership application. Every guest should get a guest package, which has some sort of promotional thing for your club, and a membership application. You could say, look, I'm not pressuring you. This is what we give to our guests. And this way, if they have it, they can fill it out. They can, one, you want to change it's a Word document, so go ahead and change it as you need to. Put it in the things about your club that are relevant. Don't leave it, because my club is different. We've got our own specific things in there, but put it to your club. Make sure that every guest that goes there has the guest package when they leave, so they can look at it afterwards and remember it. And then if they're interested in joining, they've already got the membership application.
I know some clubs can be kind of shy about that, where they want to allow the person to come maybe 1 or 2 times before they actually, give them the membership application. But Toastmasters International is very upfront with that, and they tell you, don't be shy. Get that membership application in that individual's hand. And if you really think about it, when you were making a decision to become a Toastmaster or not, I think all of us kind of sort of like knew the first time at the end of that first meeting whether or not you're going to join. So I don't see why someone would want to wait, a Toastmaster would want to wait till the second or third time that the individual has shows up, because I believe that at the end of that first meeting, they know whether or not they're going to join, even if they don't join the first time or the second or third time. I think that people more or less, they know. And so as JD mentioned earlier, get that into their hands, and so that they can, so that you're speeding up the process by, if they're already thinking, yeah, then here's the piece of paper, sign it, and let's get on with it, not allowing there to be a lull.
And by giving it with something else, and you call it a guest package, it doesn't seem as onerous as, oh, we're giving you an application to join. No, you say, here's our guest package. Everyone gets it. There's less pressure from us giving it and less pressure for them receiving it. It's just, here's some information about getting started. And if you have any further questions, please let me know. I think Elaine was going to ask a question.
Yeah, Elaine, sorry. Do you have a question?
Since we've been meeting online, I've been paying great attention to our guests by using the private chat function. So I've made a commitment to myself to connect with them twice. When I see that they're brand new, I send them a private chat saying, so glad to see you at our meeting for the first time. And then at the end, I make sure I thank them for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. And then the next time I see them, I say, welcome back, so glad to see you again. And if they participate in some way, sometimes I can also get a third contact in there where I give a quick little good job or well done, or you were funny, or like a pro, something like that. And I think they probably like that. I would normally do that if we were in an in-person meeting, but I can't do that anymore. So it's a way of making a personal connection through Zoom.
That's why we have VP of memberships. That is their role, to make sure that they're in front of guests. So VP PR, our club has a handoff. PR usually gets a request for information. The VP PR will respond back and ask, when are we expecting you this week? Just want to know so that we can have someone greet you. The VP PR will greet the guest and then do a warm handover. By the way, this is a VP of membership. They'll give you a guest package. VP of membership gives the guest package, follows up, make sure that they've got the information. When it's time to convert, the VP of membership informs the treasurer, the president, and the VP of education. Hey, we've got someone joining. Can we get them started? We also, as a president a few years back, I put a new role into our club as the mentorship chair. And the mentorship chair gets involved with the VP of education, provides a mentor. We ask them if they've made a connection, but there's always a warm handoff. And there's always the connection there, and making sure there's follow up, that the person feels like they've been taken care of soup to nuts.
Yeah, I want to add something just in my own experience. I have never been the VP of membership, but this is something I'm just really passionate about. So we really noticed that when we would send out a blanket email to, let's say, 6 guests, it didn't really go anywhere. So now what the current VP of membership is doing, kind of based on my experience, is and again, I'm in a corporate environment, so it's a little bit easier to follow up with people because you can find them online, but she'll book a call with every single guest that comes. And to be fair, I've told her, if you have 10 guests, like, delegate it, please, don't do it all yourself. But have that conversation, even if it's for 5-10 minutes. I had a conversation with somebody on my team recently, and because I took time out of my day to chat with her for 20 minutes, what are your goals? What are you looking to get out of this? Like, I kind of sold my story of Toastmasters, how when I started, I didn't want to speak up at all in meetings. And now I've gained so much. So at the end of that meeting, she agreed to become a member. And I really don't think if we had just sent an email that she would have been totally into that she would have been, yes, I'll sign up. But because people are taking the time out of their day to chat with her, she really felt like that was kind of more of her home then, to be in a Toastmasters club. So that's just my experience. I find email is great just as an initial touch, but having a call if possible. Really
And yeah, now because we're virtual and people are feeling less connection, having somebody reach out and talk to them, that is the connection, and that's connections that we're not getting as much anymore. So it's an amazing, good for you guys. It's amazing to do that.
For sure. Yeah. Does anyone else of our panelists have anything to add on this topic? Yep.
There's something called the principle of reciprocity. So I don't know if you can see this. Can't see it very well. There. A lot of clubs get these for having their members trained or other such promotions during the Toastmasters year from the district. So if you have some, or even just if you have the budget, there's very inexpensive items on the Toastmasters store. Pencils, pens, books, bags, notebooks, anything. You can get a few of those, and during an open house, just give every guest something, or you can make it a better prize for the table topic winner. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. And then even if you know it's a cheap pencil, there's something about human connection that makes us look more favorably at something like that, and a greater tendency to want to be part of that organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And especially, I know what my club has done in the past, not as much now because we're all remote, but is make a big purchase with the Toastmasters International site, because then you're not paying the shipping and all of that. But if you can kind of buy it all at once and have pens and pencils and bookmarks, that's what we have right now, it can be really great to be able to give that to people, even if they come as a guest. So I think that's a really great point that you brought up. So at this point, it's kind of just open question and answer. So we have a really small group. If you want to go off mute, I think that's totally fine. Didn't know how large the group would be, but does anybody have questions at all about anything we talked about today? Anyone?
Simmer down, everyone. Not all at once. Hang in there.
Elaine?
I have a question. Am I correct in understanding that all Toastmasters clubs are encouraged in October to have an open house? But I know that, but is it all across North America? Is it around the world? What is it? Is it just in Ontario?
I can take that if you want, Carrie.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's actually a District 60 thing, Elaine. So each district is able to designate time periods of our choosing as to when we encourage clubs to gain new members. October happens to be what we've chosen in District 60, and the other is May.
Okay. Follow up?
Go ahead.
What geographic area is District 60?
District 60 runs from the western border of Toronto, so the Toronto-Mississauga border, all the way out to just past Belleville and up as far as Algonquin Park.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm asking because my thought was if we make up an advertising flyer for an open house, it's in general that members could potentially send it out to their contacts through their own social media. Check out your local club, maybe not just for our club, but check out your local Toastmasters club for an open house this month.
You could definitely do that. I would encourage you to have the members focus on converting guests to your own club, because that's of course of greatest benefit to your club, but it's definitely a positive thing to let them know that they can join a Toastmasters club wherever they are. And it's also good to remind them that right now they can join a Toastmasters club anywhere in the world. So no matter where they are, they can join your club. And if your club is going to have a long-term ability to offer online connectivity, then they could potentially stay a member. That's going to be a very club dependent issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a great question. There was a question that came up in the chat. I just want to address it. I know JD, you were already starting to talk about it, but I was talking about calling people. You know, I have the luxury of already having people's information when I'm internally in a company, but when you're typically asking for guest information for our panelists, are you kind of, if they don't provide a phone number, are you asking, or are you just kind of leaving it at that if they're not comfortable? JD, do you want to take that one?
Sorry, I was looking there. It's never one. I mean, our club at least requires a registration for joining the meeting, in which case we have everyone's emails anyways. And that's, you know, hey, if you want us off your list, we'll take you off the list. That's the way it works. But following up, you know, it's never pressure anybody into anything. They'll leave. Always invite. So before your meetings are over, invite guests by name to come back. Say, thank you, Alton. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate you. Please come back. I know a lot of clubs have a limit on how many times somebody can attend. Our club doesn't. We've had guests show up for 6 months before they joined. And we've had guests that have come from other clubs that they were no longer allowed to go back to. So we ended up getting them. But invite them back. It happens. Invite them back. Always invite them and make them feel welcome. If they feel welcome and you say, I would just like to ask you a few more questions about what you're looking for, it doesn't sound like you're doing a sales pitch. You're just trying to help them out.
Yeah, I think that brings up, I just want to talk briefly, but our club, we used to have a limit. I think it was maybe 3 times you could come as a guest. And I guess we just thought it would open up a can of worms. It really has not. It really just hasn't. I mean, if you have meetings, maybe there's 60 people and maybe you don't want them to be that big, maybe then there's a situation where you have to put a limit. But I don't really, at least in my opinion, see the value in having that limitation, because sometimes people just really need to come out for 3 or 4 months, like JD mentioned, to feel comfortable enough to join. Everyone's kind of going to be very unique in that area. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah,
Not
Carrie,
seeing
just
others
to,
in the chat.
Carrie, just to add to your thing, there's in my club, one of my clubs, we waited for a year and a half for a group from a company to decide to come, and then eventually they join as members. So that's one way. But then I realized now, after 4 years of Toastmasters, that I could have put the sales pitch out there and say, hey, if you have started right away, you'll be getting your DTM in 4 years or whatever it takes to get that. So they are like a year and a half behind from there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because, and this is how I kind of talk about it to guests, is I say, okay, obviously feel free to come as a guest. There's no pressure here. But if you decide to join, you get access to X, Y, and Z. You get access to pathways. You can do meeting roles, which, by the way, you probably need this, at least in a corporate environment. You're probably leading meetings at some point and doing all these different things. So that's kind of how I say it. You know, keep coming as a guest if you'd like. That's no problem. But to really get the value out of this program, it won't happen as easily when you're a guest. You'll get to do table topics here and there, but it won't be the consistent speaking opportunities that you really need in order to get better at public speaking.
Before you can be great, you're going to be good. Before you can be good, you're going to be bad. Before you can be bad, you got to try.
That's a great quote. I need that on my wall. It's great. Does anybody else have any other questions at all? I know we've been a small group. So there may... Kris, is there any other in the chat that were sent to you?
No, there's nothing else in the chat right now, Carrie.
Oh, Louise?
We've covered most of what people needed.
Yeah. Louise?
You did say you were recording this. Is that their intent? Is there an intent to make this available for people that couldn't come today?
Yes, there is, Louise. We are putting a lot of these videos on the D60 TV, and there's going to be a link very shortly on the D60 site. So you'll find webinars on areas like Easy Speak, open houses, pathways, and more available on the district site there.
Perfect. Okay, that's good information. I really appreciate the feedback and information you've gathered today. So I can see this being of value, and I do want to share it with other clubs. So thank you very much. Well done, Carrie.
And thank you for contributing, Louise. You were a big part of this too.
Rose, sorry, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to thank you. It was a wonderful panel discussion. There was just so much information. It's not that it's new, but it's nice to hear it all and kind of bring it all together. So I really appreciate it. It was very useful. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you found value.
I'll say this about open houses and meetings in general. When you're planning it, start with the ending in mind, just like you would a speech. What does a successful meeting look like? And work backwards from there. Because when you can define that, when you set that up in advance, that's when you're going to be able to have goals to achieve, markers to set. And it will be a lot easier for you to plan it out, envision what it looks like, work with other members in the club to make it that work, and go from there.
Thank you.
Elaine, do you have a question?
My question is not necessarily related to a virtual open house, but my thought during the time that we've been online is that we could really meet the needs of people who are homebound now that we're online. And I'm wondering, is there a club that's primarily people who are homebound that already exists? People who are differently abled, who cannot make it out to a regular weekly meeting. Do these exist already?
I think if you actually, you can find out by Googling. One of the things that I'm in the process of doing right now is I'm getting ready to start a club for individuals who stutter. And so it's, and you know, and if you really think about it, there are hundreds of these what I call niche groups that can be used to form Toastmasters clubs. But the way that I was able to find out much of the history of people who stutter, and believe it or not, there's a huge percentage within the GTA that actually stutters. So, but you can find that kind of information. I know that there's 2 clubs, Toastmasters clubs. They're both in the UK that actually are for individuals who stutter. I have already created a meetup page, and there are already about 30-something people on it wondering, when are we going to start this club? Now that there isn't any, going right back to what you were saying, no brick and mortar, why can't I start a Zoom club with individuals who stutter?
So, when we were on the executive, if I recall, Joanne von Zuben had started an initiative to have clubs for otherly abled people. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I don't know where it went. It's been a while since that marking my years here, but it's been a number of years. But maybe we can definitely maybe follow up to see about that.
Thanks, Elton and JD, for stepping in on that question. So I think we probably have time for one more question if anybody has anything. No? Nothing more? Okay. Kris, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say before the end, or?
Just thank you very much, Carrie, for putting together this panel and for your hard work in coming up with some really effective questions as we move into Open House Month. And thank you very much to all of our panelists for your time and your expertise in joining us today. We appreciate it. And of course, to all of our guests, there'd be no point in having this panel without you. Thank you for being here.